A girl, Lana, walks barefoot on the dock at sunrise. In her hand an old postcard, worn at the edges. Lana. Some people leave, and you never hear from them again. Others, they leave, but somehow you never stop hearing them. She looks up at the empty lake, then down at the water where a faded name is scratched into the dock, L+J Summer 24. The sound of a loon echoes across the still lake. Lana kneels, runs her fingers over the initials. Her eyes brim with a sadness that has aged well. We dissolve into a memory, same dock, brighter sun, younger smiles. Summer of 2024. Lana had just arrived in the lakeside town to spend 3 months at her late grandmother's cottage, hoping to write a novel and clear her head after a painful breakup. On her first morning, she met Julian, quiet, rugged, and sun-kissed from years by the lake. He worked at a local boat shop and barely looked her way until her canoe tipped and he pulled her out of the water laughing. He teased her that day. "City girl with soft hands and no balance," he said, handing her a towel. "You're gonna hate it here." But she didn't. Because of him. They kept bumping into each other at the local market, the ice cream stand, the bookstore she didn't expect this small town to have. Julian showed her hidden trails, took her on boat rides where she watched the sun melt into the lake. Their conversations went from sarcastic to intimate. One night, under string lights hung across the dock, he taught her how to dance barefoot on the wood. They carved their initials that night. Julian had plans to leave the lake one day, but never said when. Lana didn't ask. They both pretended the summer had no end. But time was moving, and so were they. One August morning, Lana's aunt had a heart attack in the city. She packed in a panic, didn't even get to say goodbye properly. She wrote Julian a postcard on the drive telling him everything. That she loved him. That this wasn't just a summer thing for her. That she would come back. But Julian never got the postcard. It fell under the seat of her car. Forgotten for years. Back in the present, Lana clutches that same postcard. She flips it over, finally reading the words she never sent. Her hand trembles. She tucks it under the dock's wooden edge, next to their carved initials. She stands to leave until a voice stops her. "You came back." She turns. Julian stands a few feet away, older, just as handsome, holding a cup of coffee like he's lived this moment in his dreams. Lana can barely breathe. "I wasn't sure you'd remember," she says softly. Julian walks to the dock, his eyes never leaving hers. "I came back every summer, hoping you'd show up. Figured maybe you forgot me." Lana laughs through a tear. "I forgot everything, except you." They sit together on the dock. He takes the postcard and reads it quietly. When he finishes, he looks at her not with bitterness, but with understanding. "I waited for a letter that never came," he says. "Now I see, it was with you all along." The sun rises higher. They don't make promises. They don't need to. Some stories pause instead of ending. Some summers never really leave. As birds rise over the lake and the light dances on the water, Julian reaches for her hand. She lets him. And they sit in silence, listening to everything that was never said, finally, no longer unheard. Lana had barely unpacked her suitcase when the lake breeze pulled her outside. The cottage was quiet, cozy, and untouched since her grandmother's passing. She stood on the porch in her oversized hoodie, squinting toward the docks, a journal tucked under her arm, craving clarity she hadn't found in the city. Down by the boat rental shop, Julian leaned against a canoe, sunburned arms crossed, watching her like she didn't belong because, in a way, she didn't. Her sneakers were too clean. Her coffee was oat milk with cinnamon. She looked like someone who came to heal but didn't know what she was healing from. Their eyes met. She nodded politely. He didn't nod back. Later that day, she tried to paddle alone across the narrow cove. Her phone was in a plastic bag. Her sandals were tucked beneath her. But the wind changed. She panicked. The canoe tipped, flipping her clean into the lake with a loud splash. Locals chuckled from their porches. Julian was already wading into the water when she surfaced, sputtering. He didn't say anything until they reached shore. Then he grinned, maddeningly. "You broke it," he said, arms out, amused. "You fix it with me. That's the deal." "I didn't break it," she snapped. I just didn't know it was built like a pool noodle. He laughed. Yeah, alright, city girl. The next day, she was back, so was he. He handed her a bucket of tools. She looked at it like it was radioactive. You ever fix a canoe? Does IKEA furniture count? That's a strong maybe. Their repairs became routine. Mornings by the dock, her sleeves rolled up, grease under her nails. He told her stories about the lake. She told him about the city, how loud it was, how lonely. He listened more than he spoke, but when he smiled, it felt like the sun had a secret. Evenings, she wrote in her journal. Sketches. Fragments. Quotes he said that didn't seem like much at the time. By week 2, they weren't pretending to fix anything anymore. He brought her sandwiches. She brought him coffee with real milk this time. They raced paddle boats. He let her win. Once. One night, the power at the cottage flickered off in a thunderstorm. Lana grabbed a flashlight and ran down to the dock. Julian was already there, rain dripping off his hair. She didn't say anything. Neither did he. And they kissed. It wasn't planned. It wasn't gentle. It was a collision like two people who'd been waiting their whole lives for something they couldn't name until now. The next day, they didn't talk about it. Instead, they acted like it never happened. But the silence between them grew louder. He started opening up about his mom leaving when he was 10, about being scared to leave the town because it was the only place he didn't feel like a ghost. She told him her ex had told her she was too much, too emotional, too ambitious, too serious. Julian said nothing for a long time, then reached across the dock and touched her cheek. You're not too much. They were too little. That night, she danced barefoot under string lights they found in her aunt's garage. They plugged them in and strung them along the dock. No music, just the lake and their laughter. By mid-August, Lana had 100 pages written and a heart she didn't recognize. Then came the phone call. Her aunt had collapsed. Lana had to leave the next morning. She didn't wake him when she left. She wrote a postcard, poured her heart into it, and slipped it under his cottage door. But he never found it. It slid under the welcome mat, soaked by morning dew and blown away by the wind. Lana drove away with tears burning in her throat and silence louder than any goodbye. Years passed. She published a novel, toured cities, smiled in interviews. But the lake haunted every line she wrote. One day, she returned. Not because she was sure he'd still be there, but because something in her heart had never truly left. She walked to the dock at sunrise, holding the original postcard she'd rewritten by heart. The initials were still scratched in the wood, L+J Summer 24. Then came his voice, quiet behind her. You finally sent it. She turned, breath caught. Julian stood there. No grudge. No anger. Just something soft in his eyes. I thought you disappeared, he said. I did, she whispered. But only for a while. They didn't rush into each other's arms. They stood in the light of what they used to be, quietly realizing that time had made space for what they could still become. And as the sun rose again over the lake, they sat together on the edge of the dock, two people who once lost each other in a summer storm, now reunited in the calm. Some summers fade. Others become stories. But this one was both. Lana and Julian's world became a quiet one, built not on declarations, but on the ordinary magic of moments shared. The canoe they once fixed now sat proudly by the dock, untouched, as if to say this is where it all began. But now, their time was spent drifting lazily on the lake at sunset, their fingers skimming the surface, their laughter echoing off the still water. He brought her wildflowers tied with fishing line. She brought him coffee in mismatched mugs from the cottage. They didn't call it love, but it was. At night, they'd swim under the stars, their whispers almost afraid to disturb the dark. Sometimes they didn't even speak, just floated side by side, eyes closed, hearts wide open. One night, after a storm, Julian lit up the dock with strings of old fairy lights he'd dug out of storage. He held out a hand, shy at first. Dance with me. Barefoot, Lana stepped into his arms. No music, just the soft hum of crickets and the creaking dock beneath their feet. The lights cast golden halos around them. Her head rested against his chest. His heartbeat became the rhythm. For the first time in a long time, neither of them felt alone in the world. But the glow couldn't hide everything. Lana noticed the way Julian flinched when she spoke about plans after summer. Graduate programs. Cities she wanted to visit. He never offered any of his own. One evening, they sat side by side, drying off after a swim. He stared at the horizon like he could see the rest of his life floating just out of reach. "I've been saving money to leave," he said, eyes fixed on the dark lake. "Just don't know where to go. Or who I'd be if I got there." She looked at him carefully. "What are you running from?" He was silent for a moment. "My dad. He left when I was 10. Said he'd be gone a few days. Never came back. I think part of me's still waiting. And part of me's terrified I'll turn out like him." Lana reached out, her hand gently covering his. "Then don't run from this. From me. Stay." He smiled sadly, almost apologetically. "You don't stay where summer ends." The words sat between them like fog, unspoken truths rising with the night air. In the days that followed, they tried to hold on tighter. Bike rides turned into races just to feel alive. Their kisses became urgent, like maybe if they kissed long enough, time would freeze. But they both knew it was almost over. One night, he gave her a key. Not to a house, but to his old tackle box where he kept childhood drawings and notes. He said, "If I disappear, that means I trusted you enough to keep something no one else ever has." She took it, trying not to cry. Then the phone call came. Lana's aunt was in the hospital. She had to leave the next morning. She wrote Julian a letter, no fancy words, just the truth. That he had changed her. That she loved him. That she'd be back. But when Julian came to the dock, all he found was silence and a few footprints in the sand. No letter. No goodbye. He waited every morning after, same spot, same time. Years passed. He built a small business, fixed boats for tourists, kept mostly to himself. But every summer, he checked the dock. Every summer, he wondered if the girl with city coffee and fire in her eyes would come back. Then, one morning, she did. Now older, her eyes still held that fire but softer. She held out the old tackle box key, still on the string he'd tied it with. Julian stared at it, speechless. "You gave me something to hold on to," she said. "I'm here now, if you still want to be found." He didn't say a word. He stepped forward, cupped her face gently in his calloused hands, and kissed her like he'd been holding his breath for every day she was gone. The lake watched quietly, the wind wrapping around them like a promise. Not every summer ends. Some just wait. The morning was quieter than usual. The mist on the lake lingered longer, clinging to the dock like it knew something was ending. Lana stood in the doorway of the cottage, suitcase by her side, hand trembling around the letter she'd rewritten 3 times during the night. Her aunt had suffered a stroke. The hospital was hours away. There wasn't time for a proper goodbye, not the way she wanted. Julian was still asleep in his boat shed. She thought about waking him, about crawling into his arms just one more time. But she was afraid she'd never leave if she did. So instead, she left the letter folded neatly and tucked under the edge of the lantern on the dock, exactly where they always sat together. Then she drove off, the sound of gravel crunching beneath the tires like a clock winding down. When Julian arrived later that morning, coffee in one hand, an extra pastry in the other, his usual peace offering for avoiding emotional conversations, he immediately felt the absence. The dock looked the same, but something was missing. He looked around. No sandals. No journal. No Lana. He waited an hour. Then 2. By noon, he was pacing. By evening, he was angry. He walked to the edge of the dock, grabbed a stone, and flung it across the water with all the force he had left in him. The ripples hit right where they had carved their initials L+J Summer 24. He grabbed another stone. And another. Skipping them, hurling them, like maybe he could hurt the lake for letting her go. Like maybe he could skip his pain away. "She left," he muttered under his breath. Of course she did. He searched the cottage. Nothing. He searched the boat shop. Nothing. He checked his phone. No missed calls. No texts. No trace. He never found the letter. Rain came that night. soft but constant. He sat on the dock in the dark, soaked, holding the thermos of coffee gone cold. The string lights they danced under were still up, still glowing faintly, like they didn't know the party was over. That week, Julian closed the shop early every day. He walked the trails they used to hike, avoided the ice cream stand, ignored the lake like it betrayed him. He boxed up the wildflowers she had pressed into his journal, but couldn't bring himself to throw them away. Meanwhile, in the city, Lana sat in a sterile hospital room, watching machines beep around her aunt. She clutched the journal Julian had once doodled in, rereading his words like they were lifelines. She had no idea the letter never reached him. No idea he thought she just vanished. She tried calling once. But when he didn't pick up, she didn't try again. She told herself maybe this was how summer was supposed to end, beautiful and unfinished. Seasons changed. Julian kept working, kept building boats, stopped talking about her, but never once stepped on that dock at sunrise. Years passed. Then one summer morning, a local kid found a crumpled piece of paper under the old dock lantern, water-stained but still legible. He handed it to Julian out of curiosity. It was the letter. Julian froze. The handwriting. The ink. The last words. "I'm coming back. As soon as I can. If you still feel the same, meet me on the dock. You'll know when." He read it twice. 3 times. His breath caught. His chest ached. He didn't know what to do until the next morning, when he found himself walking to the dock before sunrise, just like he used to. The mist was back, the water still. And there she was. Lana. Older. Tired. Still carrying the journal. And the look in her eyes that said time hadn't changed the way she loved him. Julian didn't say a word. He just walked up to her, eyes full of everything he never got to say, and wrapped his arms around her like a man who'd been waiting 1,000 mornings for this one. She whispered against his chest, "I left the letter." He kissed the top of her head. "I found it. Just in time." They sat on the dock, side by side, feet in the water. The initials still there. Faded, but alive. Sometimes love leaves too soon. Sometimes it comes back. And sometimes, it was never gone at all. The wind rolled softly off the lake, carrying the familiar scent of pine and old memories. Lana stepped onto the dock with slow, hesitant feet, the boards creaking beneath her as if recognizing her after all this time. In her hands her latest book, a copy worn at the edges from being carried too long, opened too often. The initials were still there, carved faintly into the dock wood. L+J Summer 24. Faded, like a memory you try to forget but never really do. She crouched beside it, running her fingers gently over the letters, and for the first time in years, she let herself cry not from sadness, but from the weight of everything left unsaid. Behind her, quiet footsteps crunched gravel. "I read your book," a familiar voice said. Calm, steady, with a smile buried just beneath it. Thought the ending was a little unfair to the guy. She turned sharply, breath caught. Julian stood there. Older, broader in the shoulders. Sun-kissed like always but softer. Wiser. Beautiful in the kind of way that only time can make someone. Lana blinked, laughing through tears. He never got the letter. Julian stepped forward, his eyes never leaving hers. "I never stopped waiting by this lake." For a long moment, they said nothing. And that silence held 4 years of missed moments, all wrapped up in a single breath. She held out the book. He took it. "You wrote our summer," he said softly. She nodded. The only one that mattered. He looked down at the dock. Funny thing about summer, it always comes back. Even when you don't think it will. They sat side by side, knees almost touching. The lake rippled quietly. No promises. No apologies. Just the soft kind of peace that comes when two hearts recognize each other again. "I didn't come here expecting anything," Lana said. "I just wanted to see if this place still remembered us." Julian smiled. "It did. I never let it forget." He pulled something from his pocket, a small, silver key on an old fishing line. "You left this," he said. She gasped. The key to his tackle box. The one he gave her that night on the dock. I thought I lost it, she whispered. You did. But I kept looking. She took it from his hand, their fingers brushing, sparks barely contained. They stayed on that dock for hours, talking about everything and nothing. Where life had taken them. Where it hadn't. They didn't kiss. They didn't need to. Because some connections pick up exactly where they left off no matter how many years slip by. As the sun began to set, Julian stood. Walk with me, he asked. She smiled. Always. They walked the trail they used to hike, beneath trees that had grown a little taller. Behind them, the lake shimmered. Ahead of them, the path curved into the unknown. And just like that, the summer they thought they lost started again. Sometimes the best love stories don't end. They just pause. And if you're lucky, the heart remembers exactly where to begin again.